So if you haven't had a chance to go ahead and log in, or not log in, check in, so we know who was able to join us today. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. And I will go ahead and cover this area up, but you can, I'll make it available so everyone can go through and check in after the fact. So today we were going to talk about the worksite placements, and we did some of these. We've already had some of the information presented previously on how to enter the worksite placement. I wanted to show you that we do have, let me go to the page, in production. Let me move it over here so make sure I don't show any actual customers' names on accident. Okay, so I can tell that some people have already been entering in their worksite placement, which is great. The worksite placement has a dashboard, and how you get to the dashboard is you log into your CYEP tools. You go to dashboard, you'll see a listing of dashboards, whatever programs you have access to. You have your Community Youth Employment Program dashboard, which is the overall, like the intake process. And the ones that we just added in production is the CYEP Worksite Placement dashboard. And so as we go through the dashboard, you can filter it. If you have access to more than one location, you can use the filter. Otherwise, it's going to default to a dashboard for your area. And we have the definitions up here. So the white means that it is really, for your information. You don't need to really take any action, just to help you with knowing where people are in that area. The yellow area, we have a little icon next to it to let you know that this is an area where action is needed. And then we have the red area, so we have, it's already gone through. It's been in the yellow for a little while, and it's moved over to the red area, and that's where immediate action is needed. And then we'll have the next steps added there. And the green means that the step is complete, or they meet the program requirements for that section. And gray, it's kind of like it's, like when a button is grayed out or they're grayed out, it's no longer applicable. They're not in that section. They're no longer participating. So those are in the color definitions up here at the top. And we have some different sections. One of them is to identify the different employers that are in the system. So it looks like we've had some people that are starting to add employers into the system, and that's great. And then you can see the people that have added customers. So you can see which employers have customers placed at their location. And we broke it down so you can see which ones have subsidized, which ones have unsubsidized, and which ones have like a mixture. So as you add more of your customers to these employer placements, then the yellow number will decrease, and those numbers will move down here. And just remember that this is like a snapshot in time. So if you had an employer that, maybe they started out with subsidized employment, and then now they only have unsubsidized some unsubsidized employment, they will move down to this section. So they can kind of move, I guess you could say, depending on what the current status is with their placement. Then we have the customer placement status. So you can see we have a customer placed, but their start date hasn't started yet. They're not marked as started. So that's, again, just informational. We have customers with no placement. And so, we'd want to go ahead and, add those in, get those customers placed in the Worksite Placement tool. Right now in production, when you click on the next steps, it's not showing, but I can have Cody have those out there tomorrow. So again, it just, the next steps would say, to put them into a Worksite Placement, and it'll give you the instructions on how to do that. But you can select any of these numbers, and you'll get your filtered list of customers. So there's 272 people that need to be placed in a worksite. You click on that number, and again, this is throughout the overall program, but you click on that number, and it'll give you a listing of those customers. Then we have customers who have ever had a subsidized placement and don't have one approved payroll entry. So whenever we talk about a subsidized payment, and Erin, help me with the terminology with this. If you are the the employer or record? Okay.
Right.
So if you're the employer of record, it's important that you have that worksite placement in there, but also to include a payroll upload. And I'll go over that process in just a few moments. But once you put in your payroll upload, then DHS can go through and review those payroll uploads and approve it. So it's really important that if you have been using the money for subsidized placement, those payroll uploads need to be approved.
And I know we've had a handful of people that have been including some subsidized youth wages on their expenditure documentation forms that they've been turning in, and I understand we haven't had this on here yet, so it's just something we want to make sure we do. And this, by the way, applies not only if the provider is the employer of record, but even if you're not the employer of record. So, for example, even if the youth are working directly for another employer and they're not considered employees of you as the grantee agency, you still need to, we should still have that placement listed. We should still have it listed as a subsidized placement. We should still know what the youth's regular wage is, how many hours the youth have worked, because you have to have that documentation in order to pay that subsidy. So you should have that information available to be able to put into the WorkNet.
And so that's why this is yellow, is because if you have subsidized placement, bottom line, you need to have payroll entry upload and approved.
And they can go back for previous pay periods, right, and put in previous information, correct? So it's not something where you say, well, I've already been paying the youth wages now for several weeks, and you can go back and put in that payroll information so that you can get it up to date.
Yes, most definitely. And so then we have the customers who have payroll, and they have at least one approved payroll entry. So we don't have a dashboard that's going to say, well, for every little thing, you need to have 5 different payrolls, uploads for this person. It's doing a quick check to say, you know what, at least for this person, I know you have at least one payroll upload. And then if they're fully unsubsidized, then the payroll upload is not required. And
that's because the employer is paying all of the youth's wages, and so in that case, we don't we don't have any funds to track.
And then if the customer is no longer in the program and they don't have any placements, then we're just taking them out of this mixture. So they don't have to be caught up and locked up in one of these other areas because they're no longer in the program. And then we do have an area for the subsidized placement time period, because the customers that have subsidized payment from subsidized wages from the starting point of that placement, that's when the time starts ticking, basically, and they have 90 days that they can receive subsidized wages. So, but we do have an area that if they've either been terminated or they have a customer with an inactive status, then we need to know who those people are. For whatever reason or another, they might be inactive. Then they would show up in this yellow area to say that they, their 90 days is on hold, basically. We don't have really a set time period because on how long a person can stay in an inactive status, it really depends on the situation for that person. But we do have this red next steps area to say that if a person's been inactive for more than 30 days, then basically your next steps would be to, follow up with them, make sure that it's appropriate for them to still be in inactive status. Maybe it's that they were terminated and they needed to be added, to a different placement. So really we can just update their status. The goal is to try to get them out of the red, but there's not a real hard stop in the system right now as far as with the inactive status. But they are yellow and red here just to, we want to keep them moving. We want to keep them employed. Then the next area is green because they are active, they're in subsidized wage placement, and they have 60 days or more remaining in that time period. And then this is still green, there's not a problem, but we just want to let you know that they have between 15 and 59 days remaining in the subsidized wage time frame. And then we start to turn to yellow. Again, it's not been met. It's going to, we just want to kind of give you an alert that, they're between 14 and they have between 1 and 14 days remaining in their time period. And so what we really want to do is just to make sure that you have a plan in place for transitioning that person from a subsidized wage to an unsubsidized wage. And then we also want to make sure that you can see that they have, that you're updating that information. So just to give you, an awareness, a notification, an easy way to filter to that list of customers in your dashboard to say, oh, I need to change Natasha's wages from subsidized to unsubsidized. So that's the point. We just want to give you a filtered list of customers for where they are. And then if they are beyond the 90-day time period, they're going to go into this area, and then they will, it's basically an alert to say, hey, we're making the assumption that at 90 days, you know that they should be fully unsubsidized. But, we're making the assumption that they really are unsubsidized at this point in time, and that you just need to update the documentation in the system to reflect that they're unsubsidized, but also as a warning that if they are in subsidized employment for more than the 90-day time period, then you could be at risk for disallowed costs. Correct?
Correct, absolutely.
Okay. So we have this, that's what we have this dashboard here for. And so it's been tested on tests, and I'll continue to look at it on production, but literally this was just pushed out to production, you know, at 1 o'clock or something, right around that time frame. So if you notice anything that's a little off or anything, because sometimes the difference between production and testing, you know, we test quite a bit in tests, but when it gets to production, there might be some combination of variables that are making a person not fall in the right section. So if you see any of those, let me know. We're going to continue to look at it to make sure that everything is falling in the right place within production. And so this is live and out there for you now. I am actually looking at the production site right now. But I did want to circle back, unless you have any questions specifically on this. I'm going to go over to the test site because I wanted to, you know, just go over the how to add these people if you haven't already done this. I saw somebody typing, so I'll answer your question as soon as I see it come up in the chat. Okay, so to get to Worksite Placement, what you'll do is you go into your CYEP tools, and you have this icon up here. If you, depending on your resolution on your screen and what device you're using, then you might actually see it spelled out Worksite Placement. Again, you know, the site does use the responsive design, so you can see as we get smaller, it goes to icons, it gets bigger, you get to see more of the text. So just wanted to clarify that if it looks different on your screen. So you got this icon for Worksite Placement. And then if you have access to multiple projects, you'll see that. If you have access to different locations, you can filter by those. If you are working on the multiple projects, you'll notice that for the Community Youth Employment Program, the only type of employment that's allowed in the Worksite Placement for CYEP is permanent employment. Then what you can do is you can add an employer. So you can either select from an existing worksite, or you can add a new worksite. You'll see along the top where you are in this progress, because some of the information may look really similar, but you can see where you are in the process along here at the top. If it's green with a check mark, it means you've already done that. If it's blue and highlighted or activated with no check mark, that's where you currently are. If it's grayed out, you're not there yet. So you can add a worksite. Let's say that I had entered information and I thought, oh, well, darn it, that employer is the worksite. It's the exact same thing. Not a problem. Just click the little check mark that says that it's the same as the employer, and you can enter that information. You're going to be prompted to put in a primary contact, and then later on you can update the employer information to add additional contacts. Then you can add the worksite placement info. You can look up a SOC code. You can do a blind search, or you can enter in the information yourself. You can use the title from the SOC code, or you can just put in your own title and description. You enter in the hourly wage, the number of openings at that work site, and then you can go ahead and save it. We have the start and finish display dates. I'm going to have Cody hide those because it's just not really necessary at this point in time. So you don't necessarily have to enter that information. And so I removed it from the instructions at this point in time. Eventually, that might pop back up where it would be required, but at this point in time, it's not. Let's refresh my page here. Okay, so now that I have added in my different work sites and my placement here, my work sites, my different types of jobs, I can actually add people to those placements. So I just simply add customer, and I get my listing of people that I have access to. I can add the customer, and then you'll see that this is at the customer level. So you can see the job title, the description. It'll all be permanent employment for CYEP. You'll see the name of the customer, and you enter in the minimum wage. So we have the minimum wage data entry at the customer level because it can depend on, your region, the age, different factors impact the minimum wage. So you can update the minimum wage, and then the hourly wage needs to be at a minimum, the minimum wage. Okay, has to be at least the minimum wage. Now your subsidized wage, you can either leave it at 0. If you leave it at 0, then it automatically calculates the unsubsidized, just before the full amount of the hourly wage. If you put in a quantity for the unsubsidized wage, then it'll automatically calculate what's unsubsidized. The key thing here is, for this program, your subsidized wage cannot be more than your minimum wage. So if I put $9 here, well, let's just say I have $9 here. Okay, get all my error messages here to work out. It's not going to give you an error message right away to say that your minimum wage is more, your subsidized wage is more than minimum wage, but it will prompt you before you save it to say, is it okay? Okay? And the answer for CYEP is no. It's not okay. The reason why I'm pointing this out this way is because our Worksite Placement module is used across multiple programs in Illinois WorkNet, and that rule may or may not apply to other programs. So what we want to say is for CYEP, you just need to know that your subsidized wage cannot be more than your minimum wage. And before
the system will allow you, when it asks you, is this okay, if you were to say yes, it would allow you, but that doesn't make it okay, actually.
Yeah. So I'll leave it this way.
Real quick, I'm sorry to interrupt you too. I know Damani posted that he's having some difficulty with his sound, and I want to make sure everybody can hear. I know I can hear called in, but I don't know if people are listening over the computer, if there's anything that would be causing. Can everyone hear so far okay? Okay, it looks like several of you can hear. I know we sound tested earlier, so I would say, Damani, maybe I would say check your speakers, except you probably can't hear me as I'm saying that. So let me type a message here.
Here you go.
And another recommendation would be to call in there to the phone number. So let me post that, and then you can resume. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no problem. I'm glad you said something. Okay, so I'm going to leave this as higher than the minimum wage for now because I just want to show you the message. So then the next area is the position type. So is it full-time or part-time? And then you can have them as not started. This will be like not started / planned. We're going to update that text to show that not started means it's planned. And then you have your started. And then you have the status. So once a person starts a subsidized wage job placement, that's when your days are going to start adding. So you get 90 days of subsidized wage employment. If for whatever reason, let's say, I don't know, I'm in a car accident or having a baby or got sick for an extended period of time, and I needed to have, I'm still in that placement, but I can't work. We don't want to penalize people for, they're not able to work for good cause, and they're still in that placement. So if you choose to put them on hold, it inactivates the count. So it'll say, you're counting up to, 20 days, and if you're inactive, then it won't count for the time period that you're made inactive. And then once you're, started, then it'll go ahead and count up those days. Then if you're terminated, then it also stops the clock. So those are the different statuses. That's how it will update your information. Okay. I have my start date, and then I don't have an end date because end date basically means that I'm terminated, and we don't want to do that. So if I hit save, it's going to say subsidized wage training is greater than the minimum wage for this placement. Do you want to continue saving? It says, especially for the CYEP program, nope, I need to make changes. So I'm going to change this down to 8, and then I can either leave it as the employer pays $1 of the wage, or if I just made a mistake and it really should be $8, then that's fine too. So I hit save, and then I can carry on.
Hey, Natasha, Keisha has a quick question, and I want to make sure I understand the question. It says, is there a way to place the date the client was inactive if the date is not the current date? So let's say that, our partners are just realizing this, and they realize that they've got a participant who's been active for 2 weeks now. Can they go in and mark him as inactive with a previous date? Or is it just as soon as somebody changes the status?
Right now we have it where they change the status, but I can ask Cody about that. Like, basically, how can we record inactive using a previous date?
We'll check into that for you, Keisha, all right?
Okay. Okay. So let's see. I can't remember exactly which one I did this for, but we'll go into this person. So I added a person. The other thing that you can do, when you add customers, use the add button. If you want to see, let's say I had, in this case, I would have had 3 openings for this particular computer operator level 1. I would have had 3 openings. One of those openings is now filled in a full-time position. One of those openings is filled as a part-time position. So I only have 1 opening left. So as I add more people, you can see the count that they're already filled. And if I want to see who this person is, I click on it, and I can see their name. If I did it incorrectly, I could remove it. If I just need to edit them and change them to, part-time, then that is fine. And actually, I'm going to backdate their information here and save it. Now you can see my person moved over into my part-time position. So now you should be able to see Rob is here. whenever I did the backdating, I did that intentionally so that you could see that we have an area down below that is for our follow-up. So it's going to generate your follow-up dates based on your start date, so that's 30, 60, 90, 100, 270 days. And what it's going to do is really it's just to prompt you to say, hey, yes, I reviewed. You're going to have a dashboard with your follow-up information. But you can go to this person and you can say, I reviewed all their information and check. And it says, I reviewed the customer's information, made updates to ensure the information is accurate, current and accurate, and I agree. So then it basically just documents that you had completed that follow-up. And anytime you make these changes to this person, we have a show history. So you can see, you know, that I had just changed this person from full-time to part-time. You know, looks like you can see I updated the start date, and you can see I completed their follow-up. So that way you have a history of the changes that have occurred for this person. Any questions so far for adding a person in the worksite placement?
Looks like Keisha's got a question there. If I move a customer from one placement to another, does the system record the initial placement?
The system, it goes from your time frame starts from the greatest number of days in subsidized employment. So if you started with this person and you were terminated, and then you put them in for another subsidized employment, then it's going to use those overall total days that you have. That's what it's going to allow you to have. So if I was in a worksite placement for 10 days, and then I was terminated, so then my subsidized wage time frame goes on hold, and then I started, 10 days later, and I worked for 20 days, it's not going to use up a total of 40 of my subsidized days. It's going to use up, 30. It's going to take the 10 from the first subsidized, going on hold for the next, and then it's going to use up, 20 more days that I was in subsidized employment for my second placement. Or if I'm in, if I'm in two placements at the same time, or if I'm at two locations and part-time at each location, it's not going to double dip and double up on my days in subsidized employment. They're just a single for each single day. You see you're typing, so I'm just going to go ahead and move over to this section while you're typing. Okay. I'm just going to go ahead and go through the payroll upload. Oh, here we go. Do we leave the use under the initial employer as terminated or remove them from the site to free up a space? You can add more spots. I would still leave them there.
Yeah, we don't want to remove the record of the placement. We would just add another.
Yeah, you can just add, that's a good question, because you can just go in and for this one, I could just add another spot. Or what I just did. I guess I should look at it more closely. I don't remember which one I just added to, but you can just click on the total number of openings. We'll do this one. Click on that. Now you can see I only had one opening, and now it just bumped it up. So yeah, you can just simply add more openings. Okay. So now for the payroll upload. Now this applies to the subsidized wages, whether you're the one that's providing a wage or it's being, however that's being worked out. If they're in subsidized wages, then you need to upload a payroll upload. So to do that, you go to payroll, and then you can enter your start and end date. So if you need to do this from, from January, if you want to do 1 month at a time, then that's fine. Whatever, however that works out that you need to do that. If you want to do it for an extended time period, whatever. The system doesn't care. And then you'll download the test. All right. You could download the payroll template. I just had one downloaded just a minute ago. Let me pull one up. And whenever you enter your payroll, or when you download your payroll template, what it'll do is it puts the organization, the work site, it automatically generates all this for you. The WorkNet ID, first name, last name, SSN, and then these will all be zeros. Whenever you first get this, it'll all be zeros. And then it'll go ahead and put in the subsidized wages and the unsubsidized wages and the total hourly wage. And all you have to do, is go into each of these and fill out the number of hours worked for the given time frame. So if you only do a month, then it's going to give you that month. And then you simply upload the payroll template, if there's any other files, and then submit it. And then once you submit this, then you can, then Aaron or whoever's been identified with the DHS staff can look at the information and review it and make sure it makes sense, matches up with everything, and then they can approve that payroll upload. And then you would be able to see the status of it is approved. And you can view, what was actually uploaded for that time frame. So this gives you an overall view of all of, for that given time frame for everybody. It's no matter what the work sites are. It's for everybody that you have placed during that given time frame. And then if you want to look at the individuals, at an individual level, you could go into your group and you can look at that individual and see their worksite placement. And you can see the different worksite placements, the history of the worksite placements and where they've been placed. And if you needed to edit it, you can go and edit that information. But then you can also see the payroll uploads that have been provided for that person. So this is the individual level, and the other view that we had was for, an overall group, everything that was uploaded at one time. Any questions so far? The other area that will be updating is the progress page, because this we have an area here for the information that you have here. So we have right now we do have the information that says if they're in subsidized or if they're in subsidized only, if they're in unsubsidized or in both. And then we have the number of months at the initial job placement. So we will be reviewing this information, and if there's any additional changes that we need to add to provide more information, once you start using the tool, and if there's other things that we need to update to help clarify what a person's status is, or the number of days that they have left in their subsidized wage time frame, we can look at those different things and make updates to those pages as well. Okay. Any questions or anything you want to add, Erin?
I don't believe I have anything to add.
Okay. Keisha's typing, so we'll wait here for a moment. Okay, you have a question about case notes. Alrighty. I can, if you want, everyone. I can just unmute everyone. I didn't realize how many people were called in. If it's just easier, you want to do that?
That sounds good with me. If you want to unmute.
Oops. Sorry, I just muted you.
Your microphone has been turned on.
There we go. Everyone is unmuted.
Hi, this is Keisha.
Hello.
Good afternoon, Keisha.
Hello. So I know I was typing a lot. I have a question about the case notes. Kind of goes back to like the question I asked about the time frame for like the placements. Because like if I put a case note in a week after the service, it just shows the created date, but not the date of the service. Even though like when we do the case notes, we put in the actual dates. Is there a way for us to see both?
You know what? Actually, we are in the process. Actually, Cody this week is supposed to be updating our case notes so that we have like a contact date. So it will default to whatever our date is, that you're making the case note. So it's not requiring you to, add in any additional information. But if you want to change that date, you can change it. So if I talked to them yesterday, I'm going to enter the case note. It'll add a contact in and have today's date, but you can backdate it to the actual contact date.
Oh, wonderful, good. Because I see in my case notes, like I put in a start date and an end date, but then when the case note comes up, then it just has the entered date. So,
yeah. So
also,
that's something
is there
that we'll
a way to edit the case notes? Like
currently, we don't allow anyone to edit case notes, and that's because again, it's a global tool, and we use our case notes to populate another system, and we're not allowed to edit case notes.
Here would be kind of my suggestion on that. I mean, the way we look at a lot of these case notes, and I know it's certainly it's a different context, but a lot of this is I think of it like a medical chart or something like that. We wouldn't want to go in and erase something that was part of an important record. What we might do is what I think might work. Natasha, tell me if this is not feasible, but I think you just make another case note and maybe reference the original case note and just make an edit and say, in a previous case note it was mentioned that this was the case, please note this is a correction or something like that.
Yes, that's what we usually do.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've just been going through some case notes and just see some grammatical things, and I'm like, I wonder if there's a way to edit that.
Oh, I know. I can't stand when I've got something misspelled somewhere or something like that. I understand, but most of the time shouldn't be an issue.
Okay. And last question, I'm promised to get y'all off this call. So I had a question about entering the youth worksite evaluation and observational evaluation. Like, so is there a way, because I know that when we do them, they pretty much populate for that day, but the worker may have done it the previous week, but it says the review date is the date that we actually are putting it in. Is there a way to do, to actually put that?
I can put that as a request to do.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
That's all for me. I'm going to mute my phone again. Thank you, guys.
No problem. On the request for the changing that evaluation pieces, it may be a little while because we have some other programming, like ones that we just really need to get done. And so if it's something that's super quick that they can do, we'll go ahead and have them squeeze it in. Otherwise, it's just going to have to get in queue for some of these other big chunks that we have to get programmed. But I'm putting it down, so know that I'm not like ignoring it.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much. Erin, just one thing. So we've been doing observational evaluations and worksite evaluations. Is it okay to upload those things?
When you say upload them, what do you mean? Is it okay to go ahead and put them in the WorkNet system?
Yes. Or should we just put them in the files?
No, I would go ahead and put them in the WorkNet.
Okay, so I'll upload the ones that we have been doing previous to, the ones that we can do the day of. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
All right, well, I'll tell you what, Natasha, are we on for next week?
Sure.
All right, we will plan, unless we hear otherwise, plan to be on for next week at 1:30. And Natasha and I have been working on some fairly big things here recently when it comes to some WorkNet development. And so our programmers are working hard to kind of roll out what we're hoping are going to be some of the final pieces, really for really completing the system to be able to do what we needed to do. But a lot of these worksite placement pieces are really, I think they're really helpful. They're definitely helpful on my end, and hopefully they are on yours as well, in order to kind of to keep track of and organize information. All right. So we will plan to see you back next week at same time and place, roughly 1:30 on Wednesday. Okay.
Yep. Sounds great. Thanks, everyone.
Good afternoon.
This shows me how involved the database is. Pretty involved.
Yeah, I told you it's the base.
And who's keeping that up to date?
Me, with
Okay.
input from you guys.
Okay.
Yeah. They gave me way too much food. I had to spend at least $10 to raise my card.
Aye.
So I'm more than happy to split this with you.
Oh, no. I'm good. I haven't had much of an appetite